believe I was 11 or 12 years old. And I came home from school, and my parents were sitting at the table. I can see my dad sitting there with a somber face, with a box of belongings. And my parents proceeded to tell me and my siblings that my dad had lost his job. He'd been laid off. It was 1982. He was an engineer. And so he began looking for jobs. And all I remember, my parents took care of things. I don't remember being involved in the process, but I remember another conversation where they came to us and said, Dad has two options. He can stay in Pittsburgh and work at a nuclear power plant. Now, this is 1982. 3 Mile Island had happened recently in Pennsylvania. Just that fear of nuclear power plants was out there in the world. Or we can move across the state and he can take another job with the non-nuclear power plant or whatever company it was that he went to work at. And I guess at the time that it was, we were all very concerned about that. Probably the most resistant was my sister, who had a boyfriend. When we moved, we had only been in Bethel Park outside of Pittsburgh for 3 years, and we moved there. I made all kinds of friends. It was exciting to move to a new place and a new house. So I envisioned that happening again. And so that's what happened. And all the times we moved, because I also remember when we moved from Ohio, my parents would go looking at houses. I never remember being involved in that process of looking at houses. I know that they were focused on finding a house in a good school district. That was their focus. And so that, but I don't remember them talking about it much in front of us. That's what I remember most, is finding it in a good school district. I remember when we were moving across Pennsylvania, them talking about the houses a little bit, maybe sharing a bit of information. So this is pre-internet. There was no pictures. It was just describing things and talking about the different areas. And, there was a house at one point they looked at that didn't have a dishwasher, but it had a pool. And we had lived without a dishwasher. And we're like, no, we'd rather have a dishwasher than a pool. And those kind of conversations I remember having in the times that we moved. And we moved, and it was culture shock, and it wasn't as exciting as when I moved when I was younger. But I had that anticipation of looking forward to that and thinking about new things, and my parents just took care of things. So hello, this is Gina and Don, focused on family.
I could say the Don part.
And we're going to
I am here.
a conversation today and kind of share with you into our lives and where we're at and some thoughts we're having around anticipatory anxiety. So it's podcast number 75. First, we'll pause for a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them. The research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased.
Pretty strong.
Almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20, and I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective. to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different,
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yes.
oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
oh yeah.
armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
So instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes. And we're back.
And we're back. And Don's a little thrown off because I threw at him at the last minute, like I like to do with my spontaneity. I have this new idea of what we could do today. And you were like, what's the title? What's the title? I'm thinking about it. I'm creating it as I was getting ready this morning. This was all resolving in my head. And I know that stresses you out.
Yeah. And then isn't like we have a little bit of stress going on and other anticipatory things that are going on in our life with moving. I found it interesting when you said that about the house and the one that had the pool versus the one that had the dishwasher. I think that's one area we're kind of alike in a way. You know, it kind of goes back to like, well, even going back to the watch and the CD player.
Oh.
You know, we don't go for the.
Tell that story on a podcast.
Well, you know, we don't necessarily. We look at things differently,
Practical.
like practical. Yeah, there's a good that was the word I was looking for. Because even now, in looking at houses, you know, I tend to look past the cosmetic things, if they didn't clean or something, and I look at structure, and I look at, you know, what the septic system, if it's in good septic, you know, which we're not doing. I get it, but I'm just saying, you know, we now look at the structural stuff, and you know, so it just found that interesting that you all voted for the dishwasher versus the pool.
Well, it had been that we're without a dishwasher, and my sister and I had to wash the dishes.
Yeah.
That was our chore after dinner. And I can't remember exactly if a dishwasher had broken or we just lived without one for a while. I can't remember the specifics, but because we love the idea of a pool. I think my parents were.
I would think.
I don't know that my parents wanted the upkeep of a pool. I guess they probably said that knowing we would prefer the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine they wanted the upkeep of a pool yet.
Yeah, as teenagers or young kids, you'd think the idea of a pool would be so cool, you know, and it probably was, but the idea of washing dishes.
At night. And we still, my sister and I did the pots and pans because she always washed and I always dried. And it was just, she was my older sister and I didn't have a say. And I don't know if I ever asked to be the washer.
Well,
now I get excited. I get to wash and you get to dry.
And I don't like drying because I think that's what I had to do as a kid, even though my sister would always, it was really her and I by the time I was old enough to do that kind of thing, it was her and I mostly because my brothers had either gotten married or off, you know, anyway. And so, but she would always make it fun. She would add play a game or do a song with it or something like that. So she'd make it fun, but I had to dry every time
She
too.
was
And
5 years older than you, so there was a little bit
yeah,
slightly different dynamic. My sister and I are 3 years apart, and she was the oldest in the family, unlike your sister.
so we're kind of talking today about anticipatory anxiety.
So that came up to me. I was listening to Kathy and Todd from Zen Parenting Radio. Shout out to them and their awesome topics and community. Check them out. And between that and another podcast I heard with them recently, where they were talking with Hunter Clark Fields from Mindful Mama Mentor, and talking about kids and sharing and being open with kids, and the idea of, like, my parents and that generation, they just took care of things and they did things and they didn't include us as like decision making. And we've raised our kids differently in that they've all been involved almost to the point of too much, right? And I've
Yeah.
realized over time that I lean on them a lot, and it's important to be open with your kids and hear their feedback. And yet I know there's areas where I've put too much out there, and then they feel that anxiety that we're feeling, whether it's finances or these different decisions. And so it's something I'm actively working on and being more tuned into. And we have hypervigilant children. And so the more we share, then they're just really focused on that. Does that make sense, Don?
Well, and I think what I've always kind of felt is that even if you hadn't spoken it, though, kids still take on a lot that I don't think we realize. They can still feel it in the air, in the energy of the air. The wording is, to me, is just amplifying it more for them. But I think they're going to take it on either way in some fashion or form, just out of the energy that's in the house. Even unspoken, they'll be able to still have some of that anticipatory anxiety.
Yeah. And I'm talking just a couple different thoughts in my head here. I want to circle back around to when my parents made those decisions. It was fine. We were okay with it. And I remember at the house when we moved across Pennsylvania, and I was about 13, my sister was about 16, and so my brother was 10 or 11. They decided we would paint the house ourselves so that we could pick out the colors. And so we got to pick out, the colors for our own room, and we were involved, and it was appropriate for the time. And it was good that it wouldn't have been easy for us to be involved in going and look at the showing. So it's not a judgment on them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's so, we're in a different environment with our kids. Times are different. There's Zillow. You can get lost on there for 3 hours looking at houses. And because we communicate with our kids, they've become involved in all this process. And we're realizing, especially with our youngest, who's the only one living at home, not oversharing. When we first had the offer from OfferPad where they were just going to buy it and we didn't have to worry about showings and all that, we were so excited. And then we found out that wasn't happening. And we told our daughter before we talked to the agent, who later said, well, we can sell it as is. And so I see now how that was a little bit too much oversharing, the ups, the downs, oh, we're moving, to, oh my God, we can't move. And that emotion. And so we're realizing now, as we proceed with this process and just in other areas of life, that there's things that we need to have a conversation with out of earshot, that we need to discuss things.
Well, yeah, I think some of it too is that their priorities are different than ours in a way, and not that that's bad. I'm not saying it's bad.
On the edges of our screen.
Yeah, lean a little bit, and so it's like, well, I think I was telling you this morning. It's about something about the cats. It's a very high priority for them, and not that it's necessarily low for us, but there's so many other things on top of that are a priority for us. So it makes a difference in how they see things, and then the anxiety that goes along with that.
Yeah, we have 2 outside cats that have become ours. They started out as just neighborhood cats who showed up once in a while, and our daughter asked if she could feed them. And I'm an animal lover and a cat lover, and it was 3 cats at one point. And we're pretty sure one was the mother of at least one of these cats. Anyway, these tuxedo cats who pretty much came to live on our property, and we feed them regularly, and they pretty much stay on our property. And yet they're not still
domesticated enough to be indoors.
To get them into the vet, to get updated on shots. The one cat had the kittens at our house, and we had her spayed and taking care of them, yet they're used to being outside. And they're very used to this neighborhood because they'll disappear in the neighborhood. And especially Noxie, the mom, we'll call her Mama Cat. You know, we see her and she looked like pregnant with kittens, but she'd disappear for a while. So we know there's other people in the neighborhood who feed these cats. There's some woods here, and there's sort of an excess of cats population.
Well, in the place that we're possibly moving to, we haven't made a final decision on it. It'd be a little bit more dangerous for that to bring them there because of the roads that are around the house.
It's on like 0.2 acres on a corner lot, and it's
here we have a road that doesn't get a lot of traffic, and they have wooded area,
and they're familiar with this environment. And we don't know, we know with dogs, when we moved from Ohio to Pittsburgh, the earlier move, we had our dog Coco. He was a collie, and he had to live outside because of my brother's allergies, and my dad made him a cedar lined doghouse, and he had a good life. And we moved, and my dad was building a fenced in area for him because before he was on a chain in the yard, a big chain. And somehow he got loose, and he liked to run, and he used to get loose in Ohio and run, and he'd come back or we'd find him because he knew his way. So now we're 2 hours from where we lived before, and we never know, where was he running to? We were new in the area, and so we know with dogs, we've heard stories of them returning.
I had the same thing. I mean,
returning to
when I moved out of the house, we had a dog, and the dog got sick. My mom was ready to put him down, and my sister took him. She always loved that dog, and she loves dogs. And it ended up they had an abscessed tooth, and they pulled the tooth, and the dog rebounded back and was great. But she had her at her house, and she got out, and again, we never knew what had really happened to her, because I believe he was trying to get back to our house. So I had the same kind of story.
So we don't know, relocating cats just feels, and it would be a lot. It's sort of something we have to figure out, and because they become part of our family, all the kids, even the ones that don't live here anymore,
are very concerned about
them.
And
it, rightly so, and I am too. And I'm more emotionally attached, I think, to these cats than you are.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'm just not a cat. Never been a cat person. I married cats basically when
I had my cats. I always used to say they've been with me longer than you have.
As a child, I had dogs. We had parakeets, rabbits. We had all kinds of different animals, but cats were not one of them. There was just not. So yeah, and so I was thinking about, before I kind of forget, about when we talk about anticipatory anxiety, I was thinking about the fun side of it in a way. I don't know if that's
okay,
but I think about Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And the anticipation of Christmas, and kind of the stress and anxiety that kids go through. I remember when I was a kid, Christmas, oh my God, the excitement would start building probably around Halloween, which it I think still does. It gets commercialized to Halloween.
It's probably built sooner now,
and I think there's some stress involved with that. If you think about it. I don't know if I'd call it good stress, but
do you remember as a kid,
oh yeah,
feeling stressed by it?
Well, just wanting it to be here. I was always impatience, I guess, and I guess that could be looked at somewhat as stressful in a way, because I got very nervous about it. I was always nervous about giving gifts to people, even
Okay.
even at birthdays.
Are they
I
gonna like it or?
well, somewhat that, but more of just I want him to see it. I want him to see it. I want him to see it. I can't. I
Can't keep a secret.
yeah, and that goes to a whole nother world, because uh but yes, I think because I think about my we used to, and I think we've told kind of the story before, so I won't go into it deeply, but we would go look. Our Christmas was Christmas Eve, and we'd go looking at lights,
Santa came.
waiting,
Their
yeah,
house.
waiting, getting out of the house so Santa could come on Christmas Eve. And I can remember being in the car just, oh, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. And of course, my brothers and would always play tricks on me. They would,
Because they knew what was happening.
yeah, they would push me down on the seat, and then they'd be holding me down and they go, oh, dude, look at the sleigh. I can see the sleigh. Oh, wow, he looks really, and I'd be like, let me go. I want to see this, And so like I said, I think that was a little bit stressful for me in going through that kind of process, you know, and all my dad was doing, he was kind of circling by the street above us where you could see our house from, and it was a light on, light off kind of
Your
situation.
mom was at home.
Mom would stay home and signal him that everything was good to go, you know. So yeah, so I guess I look at that as a fun kind of thing that there is some stress involved with.
So stress can be positive and negative as a way of looking at it.
So,
So change and new things that we're looking forward to can still cause anxiety,
mhm,
as well as difficult things, difficult decisions. We've got kids with OCD, which is kind of really heightened anxiety, hypervigilance, and getting ready to go on vacation and see relatives. They were looking forward to it, but it increased that anxiety. It flared up
mhm,
the OCD, even though it was like a positive thing. So that's what I mean as far as, positive and negative. It still can have that impact
mhm.
of anxiety on you, no matter the situation.
Well, even once they got there, being the OCD, they were nervous about it going off, and what
The
might happen,
with OCD, and we've seen in our children, they're aware that their compulsions and obsessions are not rational and don't make sense. And yet, the brain is so wired that it's hard to resist it. So they're really self-conscious about it. And that adds sort of a whole nother level of anxiety.
Well, in thinking about this anxiety, anticipating this anxiety, I think about my dad and his illness. He, about a year before he passed away, he started getting sick and having to go to the doctor and do a lot of different tests and stuff. And that they anticipate, because we knew it was heart related, and I guess now I can really be really in touch with that, having gone through a lot of the stuff that he went through, in a way that there was a lot of nervousness around, is he going to be okay, is what when if is something going to happen, and then he went into the hospital, left left the house saying, I don't think I'm going to be coming back.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
And he didn't say that to me. I found that out afterwards,
He said
but I, again, with the whole idea that a child, a person can feel the energy and read it. I think there was a lot that I read into that, him leaving, that had that same thought.
Well,
And
you were 17
yeah,
and you had the experience when you were 2 or 3. No,
of losing my
3.
sister. Yeah.
Your sister went to the hospital. She was sick and she never came home.
Yeah. And so the same thing happened with my dad. And so now thinking about it, that's probably why I was so nervous with the open heart surgery that I went through after my heart attack, years later, of that whole thing of going and not coming back from that. So anyway, I was just thinking about
Well, yeah,
other ways of this.
it's that not knowing.
Yeah,
It's
the
that
unknown.
not knowing what's going to happen. As we're looking at selling our house and figuring out where we're moving, it's that up and down. because our daughter doesn't go to school, she's off doing things. Even if she was, it's been summertime, and being involved with it and all that up and down of not knowing. And so it's, at what point are we putting too much of a burden on them? And yet we've kind of raised our children in this way. We're had a conversation with our son and daughter who don't live at home, and kind of conference called them in. And then our youngest came down and discussing these different things, because we become that kind of close-knit family that our son lives 15-20 minutes away, and he'll come over for dinner, and he'll pop over during the week to help us with something. And our daughter lives 2.5 hours away, and that's a big struggle for her. Being on her own, she enjoys in her job, yet she, as we were looking at moving, she wished we were just a little closer and being able to come home easier. And, we take these things into consideration because, we are a family that likes to spend time together and values time with each other. And yet the way the world is, with, our daughter working for her aunt who lives 3 hours from us, and our son moving up in management in his job, not knowing where he's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I moved out, I was 5 hours away from my family, and yet I would say I would drive home about every other weekend for the first year, probably something like that. Maybe every.
Wow, just for you'd only have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Well, I had my own schedule, so I could flex, and I would take long weekends like Friday to Monday.
Okay.
I shouldn't say every other weekend, but I did it probably at least once a month, maybe even twice a month.
And that's a long drive, 5 hours.
Yeah. So I can kind of get her feelings, so she doesn't like driving as much as like I did, I think, back then.
You like driving?
Yeah.
Were you traveling at that point?
I drove
with sales.
Drove constantly.
Which gave you that flexibility that you didn't really work in an office. You were either out or doing things from your house.
Oh, I had my sales routes I would go on, but they were like week at a time, around. Like, I'd do Louisiana, down to New Orleans, to Shreveport, back, and then I'd do like Alabama, and so
I distracted him.
Yes,
we have
you
this
did.
Little paper that reminds us when we're saying, or
Is that what I've been? Was it the knows?
I realized why I was pointing.
Well, I thought when you did it, I figured it was the knows versus the because you're the queen, I'm the king. You see, I just did it there, but that's part of this thing. This is how, this is our natural conversation. We throw those things in. We try to stop, but I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it.
So we're improving our speaking ability with this podcast that we've now been doing 1.5 years, right?
Yeah.
And we've gone to YouTube recently. So before it was just audio.
So I guess what I'd like to just talk about is, how have we handled it? How are some of the ways that we can help this anxiety? What can we do to help our kids through it, help ourselves through it?
Well, like I talked about, realizing, not oversharing. It's like we were so eager when we thought we had a contract on the house, and you're like, let's wait till it's signed to tell the kids.
Yeah.
They don't need to be going through the up and down of things. And with our youngest, because she lives at home, it's, realizing, okay, there's certain things we need to have a conversation with on our own with. And just recognizing that I've kind of over-involved them a little too much and sharing too much. And it's not ever, you can't change, oh, we've done that, we've screwed them up, we've made this mistake. It's like, okay, how can I improve? And I hope that's something that my kids see in me, and
well, they'll learn from it too.
Action that I am not afraid to say I'm sorry to them, to apologize, to let them know my mistakes, and to change course and correct and do things in a new way. Well, that flexibility, that ability to grow and change, we talk about our kids learn most through our example, even when from what we're doing, even when we don't want them to be.
Yeah.
And so we can talk and talk and talk a game, but it's our actions that are really teaching them, and they're seeing how we interact with each other, how we interact in the world. Like when I used to be spazzo about salespeople and would get really angry at them. And how we're communicating on the phone and all those interactions. That's their learning how to communicate in the world and how to interact with people. It makes me think of siblings and allowing them to have their battles and fight. Maybe because of our kids' anxiety, we want them to be happy. We want them to get along, right? And those kinds of things can, not allowing things to unfold, allowing them to have their arguments with each other, that expectation of them being happy and comfortable and everyone agreeing is not realistic.
Yeah.
And we can add to our kids' anxiety when we're trying to fix things for them, when we're trying to solve their things, when we see that they're upset, trying to, whether it's, oh, it's not that bad, it's okay, whether you're dismissive or whether you're trying to help figure it out with them and almost getting over involved in the problem. We can listen. We can say, oh, wow, yeah, I love these cats too. They have become a part of our life. And now we have to figure something out. And we thought our neighbor was going to take over feeding them. And now she's saying she can't. And we've got to look at options. And yeah, this is heavy. Yeah, I hear you. You feel like you're abandoning them. And just not having to fix it, not having to solve it, hearing them. And when we're involved in the situation, it pulls on my emotions. And you're like, we got bigger problems. It's like, yes, we've got bigger problems, but this is important. And we need to be there and let them be heard. And then you can come to me later and like you did this morning and say, all this is going on. I'm stressed about all this. And then, the kids bring up something that seems more trivial to you.
Yeah.
And so understanding those dynamics, and it makes such a huge difference when we can stop ourselves from trying to fix and solve.
So it sounds to me, it's kind of a fine line between I think it's important to communicate with them, to be open about things, but it's finding that stopping point or that line to where you don't overdo it. So it's kind of an important to do, to be upfront with them and communicate with them about things. But yet you want to find what's the place where you don't want to go too overboard with it.
Yeah. And I know I listened to another, I think it was the Zen Parenting podcast with Todd and Kathy when they talked to Hunter Clark Fields with Mindful Mama Mentor, two of my favorite podcasts, about burdening our kids, sharing our problems and our grief where they feel like they've got to take care of us, where they feel responsible to help us. I mean, our son has some of that. I always get these, I have to go through the ages. Like he was 2, Abby was 9, he was 13 when Don had a massive heart attack, went into full cardiac arrest in our house, almost.
That was fun.
Left, he was blue in the face and we didn't know if he was going to live. So he was 13 and he took on, kind of the man of the house, so to speak, in a way that we had family members come who were, being responsible, taking them to where they needed to be, making sure they were fed, laundry and things. And the emotional support was coming more from each other, a few close people that it was just a lot to take on. And because I would be gone, I would get up 4 or 5 in the morning because I wasn't sleeping and go to the hospital, but come home before bedtime because I was still nursing our youngest and wanted to maintain that aspect, but I really wasn't around very much. I would talk to them on the phone though. They would call me. We'd have great conversations. In some ways I felt like I was a better parent because when I was with them, I was really connecting and I was there for them and I was listening. I remember our middle child was really flaring with her OCD. And I remember going in the hallway of the hospital that was an empty area they were remodeling. And she was having trouble getting something for herself to help calm herself. And I had to talk her through it. And I did all these things from a distance over the phone. I'm losing my train. But the point is, What is the point?
I was not, hadn't found that point myself, but
Okay,
that was
so-
gonna let you just go on.
Have our kids feeling responsible for taking care of us.
Yeah.
So I was talking about how our son, and he's always been very, he's seen the struggle financially, and now that he's 25, he wants to help us. He's always giving us advice, but he was doing that when he was younger too. He
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
kind of that big brother mothering figure. But realizing, what areas am I expecting them to support me and to be my emotional support system? Because that's not good, right? That can have negative effects on the kids. And have I done that in the past? Yeah, I'm sure I can think of ways I have. And okay, how can I do that differently? What changes can I make? And then there's the other side where, you're the parent, they're the kids, and you're not sharing that information. We like to talk about, if parents have a fight and they go off and then they come back. I remember as a kid, like, I know my parents talked and worked it out, but as a kid, I didn't know that. I'd be like, oh my God, they're getting divorced.
Yeah.
It was the 80s and everyone's getting divorced. And that the kids to be able to see you resolve an argument, not that you have to discuss big, important things in front of them, but to see that process and to be involved in that process and to have a voice and to feel heard and part of the family. So, there's kind of two extremes of things, of overly dependent on your children, expecting them to be your emotional support. I can think of movies, Pretty in Pink pops in my head, and her mom just leaves them. And so the father, I want to say he drinks and he can't keep a job. And so she's got to work and she's got to take care of her dad, and take care of things. And she has to step up and do all that. And I can't think of an instant example for the other extreme. Good Will Hunting pops in, not Good Will Hunting? No. The one where he stands on the chair and says, Carpe Diem.
Oh, Dead Poet
Society. So that's from the 50s, 60s, where parents, told the kids and they did as they were told, and they expected them to be a doctor, and they had to because that's what they expected, and sort of, that's sort of an extreme version. But finding a balance. Mm-hmm. And realizing the anxiety involved. The anxiety involved when I was a kid and not knowing, when my parents would yell at each other and disappear, and wondering in my room what was happening. Are they getting divorced? And then, okay, we're back, things seem like normal. And yet the anxiety when you're more involved with your kids and they're really involved in things, that added anxiety. Like when we shared with our daughter that, oh, okay, now, they're not going to buy our house. And so we went from moving to, oh no, we can't move at all. And just.
So it's knowing that line, that what your kids are kind of capable of handling. And
all kids are differently.
Yeah.
All kids can process things differently. And at different ages, different things are appropriate to share. And realizing, like, you made it a point about the cats were really important to the kids, and not diminishing things that are of value to them.
Yeah.
Because we have different priorities. We have different things on our mind with other responsibilities we have. And that doesn't mean that, well, we've got all this going on and we got to get out of debt and we got to think about all this cleaning up stuff. And you're worried about outside cats, diminishing their feelings when in their world, especially young children and even whatever teenagers, what they're dealing with is their world.
Yeah.
And to allow them to share those griefs, not trying to fix it and solve it for them. That's a big thing that I have learned, that I realized I would try to do with their anxiety and wanting to make it better and wanting everyone to get along. That's kind of in my personality. My mom called me the peacemaker. And
that's a burnout place.
I've heard it from different podcasts that I've listened to, that it doesn't do your kids service to try to fix and solve things for them. And like I know I've told you sometimes when Abby comes home and they're fighting, it's like, this is good. This is how they learn to communicate with each other, having that dynamic with a sibling. This is healthy, and allowing that, and not expecting, stop fighting, stop doing, get along and go, just trying to dismiss that. You're kind of dismissing those negative emotions, just like don't cry, or wanting people to be happy all the time. It's sort of we say we want our kids to be healthy and happy, Yet are we really expecting them to
Yeah.
be happy all the time?
To be healthy is to have all their emotions be
Right. And
so
that's kind of a whole nother realm. There's so many areas
Yeah.
we could dive into on deeper
well,
topics.
just wanted to throw out another way of handling that anxiety, of course, is what I do in the EFT, and being able to use modalities like EFT and breathing and grounding and things like that can also help for anxieties like this too. So,
And having those, building your toolkit, I like to call it. I've learned Reiki, EFT, meditation, energy work, all kinds of different self-help things we've done and involved in, and having the kids be a part of that. When I was learning Reiki, my older kids were young, like 3 and 7, and we got together with a group of homeschooling moms and we learned Reiki, and they got to play together and being around those like-minded people. And then I remember used to doing grounding exercises with them, and our oldest went to Unity when we both went regularly to the Unity Church that was of that mindset of, I'm not going to think of the word I want to say, Don, kind of a metaphysical belief and understanding and acceptance. And even though he calls himself agnostic, I hear him saying things like, when I apologize for something I did, and he's like, well, it's in the past, it's behind us now. And I know that had that effect on him, and that being able to use those skills and those coping strategies when they see us using it and it working, even though our kids can be resistant to tapping, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So
it's building that toolkit and having those things available. And even if your kid's not going to do it, doing it for yourself. And you've talked about surrogate tapping, and we can check out more if you're interested in that, and having another podcast more on EFT. But there's lots of information on the website to find out more about that, where you're literally tapping for someone else.
Well, just to kind of wrap up, I guess, is that what we're talking about is the anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, and allowing your kids to be part of your life and communicating with them, and just watching the boundaries of that, where you take it, so that you're not putting more responsibility and more anxiety on them by laying out your stuff on them. So we're talking about that, and how and handling it is being able to allow them to communicate, allow them to,
and recognizing the anxieties, recognizing, okay, this might be stressful for them. Okay, they're telling me this and I'm getting frustrated, and okay, I'm going to step back, okay, this is, even if you mess up the first time and you don't listen and really hear them with their feelings, it's like, okay, that's where they're at. Okay, I can realize that that's important to them, and I don't have to put my stuff on them. I don't have to talk down to them that, you're worried about little silly things. We got bigger, important things to deal with.
And then giving them the tools, to be able to handle the anxiety, like the EFT, the Reiki, the different things that they can do by showing it by example.
Well, I was going to say, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of your kids. So it's not like, oh, you need to do this now. It's, how are you living your life? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you handling your own anxiety? And you can encourage them, you can give them the resources and support, but not expect them to do it. They've got their own process that they've got to go through. So lots of different thoughts here today. Hope you enjoyed joining in this conversation as we've talked about many different things.
Yeah, and that's our podcast for today, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Comments, tell us topics you'd like to hear, maybe around parenting, around families. And, you can learn more about us if you liked what you've heard by going to our website. You can find our blog. You can find information about our programs.
Links to tapping resources and other things we've talked about today.
We have our Tuesday tips. Every Tuesday, we do a short podcast, but we also email them out, effective tips for parenting, and also our workshops. We're hoping to come up with one pretty soon here. And you can find it all out by going to focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focus with an ED, healthyfamily.com. You can check out our Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, and our Instagram at Gina at Focused Healthy Gina Focused, healthy. I got to get that one right. Um, and remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours.